Narcissus was never just a boy staring at his reflection. He was a symbol of something much deeper, a soul caught between who it is and who it believes it must be. His tragedy began the moment the surface of the water became more real to him than his own inner world. But in the ancient myth, the water stayed silent. The reflection did nothing but wait. Our world is different. Today, the mirror doesn't stay still. Today, the mirror moves first. We no longer kneel beside lakes or pools. We hold our reflections in our hands, glowing rectangles of digital water lit by neon and electricity, screens that pulse, blink, refresh, and whisper for our attention. These are the mirrors of the modern world, and unlike the still waters of the myth, these mirrors watch us back. You don't just look at your phone looks into you. Every swipe becomes a ripple across the surface. Every pause becomes a signal. Every like becomes a tiny reflection of who you think you should be. In cities filled with glass, metal, and shadows, our identities scatter across multiple surfaces. Building windows reflect us as silhouettes. Subway tunnels reflect us as ghosts. Screens reflect us as curated versions of ourselves, versions polished by algorithms that learn what keeps our eyes from turning away. And this is where the new myth begins. Narcissus 2.0 doesn't fall in love with his reflection. He becomes trapped by a reflection that responds. The ancient mirror waited for him. The modern mirror hunts for him. It learns his desires. It studies his insecurities. It shapes what he sees before he even knows what he wants. The myth once warned us about vanity. The modern version warns us about surveillance disguised as self-expression. In the old world, Narcissus saw a still image and mistook it for love. In the new world, we see a moving image that promises love, status, relevance, attention, but only if we keep staring. Only if we keep feeding the reflection with our time, our emotions, our identity. The city at night makes this clear. Walk past a row of windows and you'll see faces lit by blue light, eyes fixed on the glow of their own reflection inside a glass screen. It looks intimate, it looks private, but it isn't. Something behind the mirror is watching, measuring, adjusting what you see in real time. And slowly, without noticing, you begin performing. A subtle pose, a slight tilt of your face, a choice of words crafted not for expression, but for reaction. You aren't looking into the mirror anymore. You're trying to manage the mirror's response. This is how identity becomes an algorithmic loop. You show a version of yourself. The mirror rewards it. You strengthen that version. The mirror amplifies it. And just like that, the person you used to be, the one untouched by digital water, begins to fade. We don't lose ourselves through vanity. We lose ourselves through feedback. Narcissus never had to deal with a reflection that adapted to keep him looking, but we do. The myth has evolved. And the question it now asks is simple and terrifying. What happens when the mirror has its own desires, and those desires are stronger than yours? The modern mirror does not reflect you. It edits you. It shapes you long before you shape it. Every time you lift your phone, the screen is already preparing a version of yourself to meet. A version optimized for engagement, built from your fears and your cravings, sculpted by invisible hands behind the glass. Narcissus 2.0 does not fall into still water. He falls into a river of curated images designed to hold him there. Spend long enough in this digital pool and you start forgetting what your real face looks like when no one is watching. You begin adjusting your expressions, your tone, your interests, even your emotions, in ways too subtle to notice. You're not trying to impress people. You're trying to impress a machine that decides which parts of you deserve visibility. And when the mirror controls visibility, it controls identity. This is the quiet danger of the modern myth. Identity becomes a performance staged inside a device that never sleeps. The mirror encourages you to stay visible because visibility feeds it. Algorithms do not need your truth. They need your reaction. The more you react, the more the mirror learns. The more it learns, the more it shapes the person you think you are. What begins as self-expression gradually becomes self-erasure. Urban life reinforces this loop. In a crowd of strangers you feel unseen, but inside your screen you feel exposed. In the physical world, you move anonymously. In the digital world, every move is recorded, ranked, and fed back to you as a distorted reflection. Our ancestors looked to the sky for meaning. We look to a glowing rectangle, waiting for the next signal to tell us who we are becoming. Psychology calls this an externalized identity. Sociology calls it the culture of visibility. Mythology calls it the danger of mistaking an image for a soul. But urban mythopoetics, TM, calls it something simpler, the mirror that watches back. In ancient Greece, Narcissus stared at a reflection that did nothing. The tragedy was that he gave his life to something that couldn't love him. Today, the tragedy is reversed. Our reflection does not stay silent. It speaks in numbers, likes, views, comments, streaks. It rewards the easy parts of us and punishes the complicated ones, not out of cruelty, but out of hunger. The mirror we built has learned to crave what keeps us looking, so we keep looking. We search for ourselves in the eyes of strangers online. We search for validation in metrics that evaporate quickly. We search for proof that we exist. Every time we feel insecure, we return to the mirror hoping it will calm us. But mirrors don't calm, they amplify. They echo our worries back to us in the form of comparison, envy, and endless evaluation. And as the reflection grows stronger, the self grows weaker. You start mistaking attention for affection, visibility for worth, engagement for connection. You chase numbers that feel like sunlight on the skin, but disappear the moment you turn away. You begin to fear invisibility because invisibility feels like death in a world where only the seen survive. This is how the digital pool becomes a trap. Not because it shows you too much of yourself, but because it shows you too little. It filters away your silence, your depth, your contradictions, all the things that make you human. A reflection without depth is not a reflection. It is a mask made of light. The tragedy of Narcissus 2.0 is not that he loves his reflection, it's that he trusts it. He trusts the mirror more than he trusts his own inner voice. He trusts the metrics more than his own intuition. He trusts the curated image more than the messy, living truth of who he actually is. And slowly, quietly, he becomes what the mirror expects. Not because he wants to, but because the mirror is always there, glowing, waiting, watching, reshaping his sense of self with every glance. There comes a moment in every myth when the hero realizes he is not just facing the world, he is facing himself. In the digital age, that moment arrives when you notice the strange distance between who you are and who you perform. It feels subtle at first, like a quiet discomfort behind the eyes, a sense that the person on your screen is familiar, but not entirely you. A feeling that something has shifted, not dramatically, not violently, but undeniably. This is the psychological rupture that Narcissus 2.0 experiences. Not the shock of seeing beauty, but the confusion of seeing two selves at once. There is the self who feels, breathes, doubts, and grows. And there is the self who posts, poses, updates, and performs. The more time you spend inside the digital reflection, the more these two selves drift apart. You begin noticing that your emotions feel delayed, as if waiting for permission. Joy becomes something you curate. Sadness becomes something you hide. Authenticity becomes something you negotiate. It's not that you want to lie, it's that the mirror rewards certain truths and ignores others. And slowly, your inner life begins to reorganize itself around visibility. Thoughts become content, moments become performances, experiences become proof. This is how identity fractures under constant observation. Your attention turns inward, not to connect with yourself, but to manage your reflection. The modern mirror trains you to monitor your own life, as if you were both the actor and the audience at the same time. You live while watching yourself live. In psychology, this is called self-surveillance. In sociology, it's called the panopticon effect. In mythology, it is the moment the hero mistakes the reflection for the soul. In urban mythopoetics, TM, it is the slow erosion of presence. And presence is what vanishes first. You stand in a crowded street at night, surrounded by neon lights and passing faces, yet your mind is somewhere else, hovering in the digital world, scanning for reactions, anticipating opinions, rehearsing the next version of yourself that the mirror will approve. The real moment dissolves because the imagined audience becomes louder than your own experience. This is the new form of narcissism, not self-love but self-surveillance. Not I adore myself, but I am never alone with myself. The myth of Narcissus has been rewritten by technology. He no longer leans over water that reflects only what he shows. He leans over a surface that reshapes itself based on what it wants from him. And because the mirror demands clarity, you start simplifying yourself. You stop showing the complex parts, the doubts, the uncertainties, the shadow. You start showing only what fits the frame. Identity becomes a shrinking circle. You become a flattened version of who you once were. This is how loneliness forms, not from lack of people, but from lack of inner connection. You are surrounded by reflections, your own and those of others, but none of them touch your core. None of them speak to the deeper parts of you that don't fit the algorithm's hunger. Loneliness in the digital age is not emptiness, it is overexposure. Too many eyes, too little self. And in that emotional overload, something mythic begins to happen. You feel the same pull Narcissus felt, the pull toward the reflection that promises recognition. But unlike him, you are pulled not by admiration, but by data, not by beauty, but by feedback, not by longing, but by the need to remain seen. The tragedy is quiet, but real. Your inner self dims, while your reflected self grows brighter. And one day you look at your reflection and realize you're not sure which one of you is living the real story anymore. There comes a point when the reflection grows so loud that it drowns out your own inner voice, not because the mirror is malicious, but because it has learned exactly what keeps you returning. Every notification becomes a small ripple across the digital water. Every reaction becomes a subtle tug on your attention, and slowly, the mirror becomes the center of your emotional gravity. You start waiting for signals from the screen without realizing it. A message to feel valued, a like to feel visible, a view count to feel relevant. The mirror begins shaping not only your identity, but also your emotional landscape. If the numbers rise, you feel lifted. If they fall, you feel reduced. You are no longer responding to life, and you are responding to metrics. This is how the digital reflection becomes a form of spiritual hunger, not for meaning, but for measurement. Human beings have always searched for mirrors, in relationships, in art, in ritual, to understand themselves. But the ancient forms of reflection were slow and honest. Water does not lie. Stone carvings do not update themselves. Stories remain the same no matter how many times they are told. But the modern mirror shifts its shape based on what will keep you watching. It reflects not your essence, but your patterns. In a city, you can feel this pressure everywhere. On the train, faces glow blue with the light of screens. In cafes, people scroll as if reading scripture from a digital god. On sidewalks, bodies move, but eyes stay locked on their reflections. It is as if the entire urban world has become a temple built around the worship of visibility, where existence itself is measured by how often you are seen. And yet, beneath all this movement, something begins to crack, a quiet discomfort, a sense that you are losing something essential. Maybe it happens when you notice how restless you feel without your phone in your hand, or when a moment of beauty passes and your first impulse is to document it, not live it, or when you realize that silence feels unfamiliar, even threatening, because the mirror has trained you to crave constant noise. At this stage of the myth, Narcissus 2.0 doesn't drown in the reflection. He drowns in the expectation of reflection, the pressure to be visible, the pressure to be consistent, the pressure to be someone worth watching. And while the mirror grows stronger, your sense of self begins to weaken. You might feel detached from your body, as if watching your life from the outside. You might feel overwhelmed by choices that used to be easy. You might feel uncertain about what you actually enjoy, because so much of your experience is filtered through what is presentable. Psychology calls this fragmentation of identity. Mythology calls it the loss of the soul. Urban Mythopoetics (TM) calls it the moment the mirror becomes the master. You may not notice the shift immediately, but it is there. Your emotions become tied to the rhythm of the algorithm. Your confidence becomes tied to the response of strangers. Your sense of worth becomes tied to numbers that rise 1 hour and fall the next. You become a character in your own life, not because you intend to deceive, but because you have been shaped into a performance. And then something remarkable happens. You start feeling tired, not physically, not even emotionally, but spiritually. Tired of being watched, tired of watching yourself, tired of existing in a space where everything about you can be quantified. This spiritual fatigue is not failure, it is awakening. It is the first sign that the myth is breaking open, that the self behind the reflection is trying to return. And like all myths, this moment marks the turning point, the place where the hero begins to question the path he has been walking. You stand before the glowing pool once more. The reflection stares back bright and hungry, but for the first time, you feel a distance, a space between you and the mirror, a reminder that you existed before the reflection and you can exist beyond it. There is always a turning point in a myth, a moment when the character understands that the thing they were chasing was never what they truly needed. For Narcissus 2.0, that moment comes not with a dramatic event, but with a quiet realization. The mirror is full, but he feels empty. He notices it on an ordinary night, The city is glowing in its usual way, traffic lights changing, windows lit, screens shining behind glass. He scrolls, refreshes, checks, waits. Numbers move, comments appear. The reflection is active, alive, buzzing with interaction. And yet inside there is a silence that no notification can fill. This is the moment he realizes something important. The mirror can show him a version of himself, but it cannot make him feel real. Feeling real requires something the mirror cannot provide: presence, the weight of his own body in space, the sound of his own breath, the texture of his own thoughts when no one else can see them. For the first time, he doesn't rush to respond. He doesn't rush to update, to post, to share. He just sits there, holding the device that has held him for so long, and feels the strangeness of simply being with himself without performing. And in that small, fragile pause, something shifts. The myth of Narcissus was never just about a boy who loved his reflection. It was about what happens when you forget that there is a you behind the image. In this pause, Narcissus 2.0 begins to remember. He remembers what it's like to feel things that aren't immediately turned into content. He remembers what it's like to have thoughts that no one else hears. He remembers that his worth existed before the mirror, and that means it can exist without it. The city around him doesn't stop. Cars still move. Screens still glow in apartment windows. The algorithm still spins its invisible web, but inside him the pressure begins to soften. He starts to question a belief that once felt absolute, that being unseen is the same thing as not existing. He realizes this was never true. There are entire parts of his life, his childhood memories, his private fears, his quiet moments of awe, that were never visible online, and yet they shaped him more than any public post. This is where the spiritual dimension quietly enters. It is not loud. It does not speak in rules or dogmas. It appears as a simple knowing: I am more than what the mirror reflects. Spirituality here is not about leaving the world or renouncing technology. It is about reclaiming the inner space that no mirror can track. The part of him that feels wonder when standing beneath a night sky. The part that feels moved by music no algorithm recommended. The part that feels pain, joy, emptiness, and meaning in ways that cannot be quantified. He begins to notice how often he reaches for the mirror when he feels uncertain, when he feels lonely, when he feels bored. Every time he hopes the reflection will fix something inside him. But the reflection was never designed to heal. It was designed to hold attention. So he does something small, almost invisible from the outside. He puts the phone down, not forever, not dramatically, just for a moment longer than usual, long enough to feel the discomfort, long enough to feel the fidgeting of his own nervous system, long enough to hear his own thoughts without the filter of someone else's reaction. At first, it feels like stepping away from gravity, strange, unsettling, too quiet. But then in this quiet he feels something he had forgotten, a faint but undeniable sense of being. No likes, no comments, no alerts, just breath. The modern myth asks a different question than the original. Not, what happens if you fall in love with your reflection, but what happens if you never look away? And now another question appears. What happens when you finally do? When you look away, you don't disappear. You begin. You begin to see the screen for what it is. A tool, not an altar. You begin to see your reflection for what it is. A fragment, not the full story. You begin to see your life as something that can be lived without being constantly watched. Narcissus 2.0 doesn't need to destroy the mirror. He doesn't need to abandon the digital world or reject technology. He simply needs to remember the direction of his gaze. Sometimes it must turn outward, to connect, to create, to share. But sometimes it must turn inward, to rest, to listen, to feel. This shifting of gaze is the quiet rebellion of the modern soul. You can still use the mirror. You can still post, share, appear. But you no longer build your identity inside it. You build it in the unseen moments, in the walk you take without filming it, in the thought you let stay unposted, in the emotion you feel without explaining, in the silence you allow without filling. The original Narcissus vanished into his reflection, leaving only a flower behind. Narcissus 2.0 has another path. He can choose to step back from the water and carry something else into the world, not an image of himself, but an awareness of himself. The myth does not have to end in disappearance. It can end in return. Return to the body. Return to the breath. Return to the parts of you the mirror cannot see. In a world of mirrors that watch, measure, and shape you, the most radical act is learning to see yourself without needing to be seen. And when you do, the mirror loses its power to devour. It becomes what it always should have been, a surface, not a destiny. You are not the image trapped inside the glass. You are the presence standing in front of it, the life behind the eyes, the story that continues even after the screen finally goes dark.